had a dream that God and ancestors told me they trusted.
Okay.
After that point, things just started finding me. When you do something and you have a passion and a heart for it, so much so that you literally put your money where your mouth is and you dedicate your time, your resources to it. That's a sense of dedication that kind of supersedes everything else.
Mm-hmm. Self-quarantining.
And a quarantine order.
Quarantined in their...
Held in quarantine.
Quarantine.
The quarantine in place.
Quarantine for the required 14 days.
Hey, what's up, people? I am JC, and welcome once again to another episode of Quarantine Talks. Today, I have on the show with me a very, very special guest. He was nicknamed the Keeper of the Jewels by the late Dick Gregory himself, Mr. Eric Majette. All right, now he got that name Keeper of the Jewels because he's the owner of a traveling Black American History Museum with over 10,000 pieces. Yes, 10,000 as in 10 100s as in 4 zeros after the one. Jesus. We discuss how his obsession with the record keeping of his own family legacy led him to the eventual creation of this museum and spending over 100K, 100,000, 100 bands, y'all, of his own hard-earned money to purchase artifacts from legends like Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, and Madam C.J. Walker, just to name a few. And then speaking of Madam C.J. Walker, we talk about how historically inaccurate the Netflix documentary based on her life was, how the African American History Museum in DC has tried to exploit Black history collectors like himself. Yes, exploit with the oit, and the ways and means of how he acquires these pieces. We also talk about being pen pals with Lena Horne, working with Ray J in China. We compare and contrast our very first trips to Africa. And last but not least, we talk about him working on set with Tyler Perry. Y'all, he had a dream that he was gonna work with this man, and he actually did. People, I rarely meet a person that knows as much or more about Black history than me. And in this episode, I think I pleasantly met my match, y'all. Very educational, informational type shit that we doing today. So, let's go. And what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Quarantine Talks. This is me, JC. And today I got with me the Keeper of the Jewels, as they like to call him. Go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Hello, my name is Eric Majette. I have the pleasure and honor, as the brother said, of being named the Keeper of the Jewels by the late, great, legendary Dick Gregory.
Dick Gregory. Oh, Dick Gregory gave you that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's dope. Go ahead and tell them, well, you already said who you are, but tell them, I guess, like a little bit of what you do and where you're from.
Okay. Well, I started off in film and television it's actually been more than that. Film, television, and music. I really started off in music about 25 years ago. And from there, it evolved to film and television.
What kind of music? Was you singing?
No, actually, I used to work in behind the scenes. Okay. Well, we all started off singing at some point. Yeah. But I started off in gospel at the age of 12, working with a lot of the legends. Okay. That's how I got my start in music. Then from there, probably by about 14, I was kind of doing assistant work and like booking and management. Okay. And just kind of evolved from there. My uncle was a promoter in my hometown, did my first show with him, and we had India Irie. I don't even remember what year that was. That's been so long.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, so it's going way back, and then bringing it up forward. While I was in college at Morehouse here in Atlanta, I had a dream that I was going to work for this man named up-and-coming talent named Tyler Perry. And, okay. And that day, I actually had a job offer.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I got into film and television.
Come through, ancestors.
Yeah. From there, it was a series of things that happened to give you the short version. Stayed working with him, I want to say till about 2010. So that was 4 years I worked with him, and then got burned out completely. We were in the beginnings of Black Hollywood here in Atlanta, so everything that we did was unprecedented, and we literally created 100 episodes, which is the equivalent of 5 years worth of work in 1 year.
Yeah.
So by the time that ended, I was completely burned out, disillusioned, all of that stuff.
I've heard. I had the opportunity to speak with Brittany Inge last week, and she's she's Crystal on Boomerang, and she was talking about how she said, we film like 2 or 3 months out the year, and we film maybe 4 weeks of episodes. It was like, no, and we got it good because if you work for Tyler Perry, you do 5 episodes a week. And I was like, Jesus.
In the beginning, when I was there before all this new stuff, like it was, I can't even tell you. Like literally, we had before we even filmed House of Pain back in the day, we had a distribution deal. Like it was crazy. We had 100 episodes, like deal.
Right.
So it was so unprecedented that had never happened before. And when I tell you, we were filming TV shows during the daytime and filming films at night. It was.
That sounds terrible.
Oh my God. So yeah, that, and then all the while I'm doing that, I'm actually using my income to buy back our history. Okay. Little bits at a time. And then fast forwarding up till now, I'm still in film and television, still in music. And then also I have one of the world's largest Black history traveling museums. I have upwards of 10,000 pieces. And as I said before, I used my life savings to buy back our history from white people.
Did you say 14,000?
About 10,000.
Oh, 10,000. Okay, it cut out like it was a little glitch when you said it. I was like, wait, how much you got? Okay,
yeah.
That's crazy. Because I know you say you're still working on TV projects, and your most recent one, I think you said, was Black Lightning.
Yep,
which is fitting.
The 24th was my last day,
which is fitting considering your occupation and your other side hustle and all of that. That kind of like flows into it. But like, how did you get into buying back all of this memorabilia that is ours from? How did that happen? Because that's just interesting. When Crystal told me about you, I was like, wait, he got what? He got letters from Malcolm X. Like, what you mean? Like,
yeah,
how does that?
It actually wasn't. It wasn't a choice of mine. It was actually something that I would say was my calling. That's the easiest way to put it. To be honest with you, I've always been enamored with our history ever since a kid. Okay. Like I was a very strange kid. I enjoyed history as young as I could remember. I always wanted to know where I came from. Okay. We had a small immediate family, and I always wondered where I came from. So I started early on digging like for history. My great-grandmother and my grandmother, I was raised by them. My parents were in the picture, but they were very young. My father was 21 and my mother was 19 when I was born. Okay. So they had my paternal grandmother and great-grandmother raise us. It was myself and my older sister. And I always wanted to know. So I literally picked my great-grandmother's brain every chance I got. Mm-hmm. I literally kept a notebook. I have that notebook somewhere. And I would take notes, and I literally would write down everything. And from that time period, probably around 98 up through, she died in 2004. So that span of time, I literally got so much of my history, my family history, and had put all that stuff up on, the predecessor of Ancestry.com. This was when this was when it was on floppy disks. Okay. And they used those files that we did early on in the days of the beginning of the internet.
Right. You just said floppy disk. I don't know. Some people listening to this going to be like, what is that?
Right. It was floppy and hard disk.
It was a jump drive.
right. And that's what it was right now. But they took those early files, and that's what they made and created Ancestry from. It was literally a box software, and I probably have the original somewhere. And they took those files and they actually created Ancestry from that. But
you mean like Ancestry.com?
Yeah.
From your...
Not just mine, but all those people that in the early days that actually bought the software, because it started off as a software. Okay. And then we uploaded all of our information on, and they created the database now known as Ancestry.
Do you get money from this?
No.
Why not?
I would like to know too. Yeah, no, we didn't get him. But from those files, I actually 10 years later, I wound up connecting with a person that turned out to be a relative. Mm-hmm. In the beginning, they put their little thread of names of family members that they knew. I had all of mine from my stuff from my great grandmother. She was born in 1912, so she had the oldest memory, of course, of the family. And the lady I had reached out to back then, she wound up finding me 10 years later. I was a sophomore at Morehouse. She had found my sister in my hometown, got in contact with my sister. My sister then gave her my number. She called me up while I'm at college, and she's like, "Hey." My sister did. She was like, "Hey, this lady says that you guys, got in contact on the internet like 10 years ago. Found the resources that you got from Graham. She says she found a link in the family." I said, "Yeah, you can give her my number." And then from there, that's actually when we found out that we were related. And because of my research, we wound up connecting. Let me say that again. Reconnecting family that had been lost for about 100 years. Oh, wow. So we wound up actually doing a couple years after my great grandmother died, we wound up doing the first family reunion of our family that had been disconnected for 100 years.
And 1912 to at that time to 2012?
Yeah, it was 19 when she died.
Yeah, so wow. Yeah.
But no, she died in 2004.
Right.
So she was 22 when she passed away.
Okay.
But literally she remembered everything. They had moved from Alabama to Newark, New Jersey in 1915. So she was about 3 years old, roughly. Okay. So she remembered as early as 2 years old. And literally just, I got it all. And that was kind of what started me out as a researcher, because I had to literally go on. I was writing the census, finding the Census Bureau stuff, writing the vital statistics. This was before the internet was available. So I had to do all this research, and that really is what started me off on my path as a historian.
That's crazy.
And then it just mayor.
That is a level of dedication.
It was.
Because like you said, pre-internet means libraries. It means like downtown data records. It means like, calling and faxing.
Statistics all the time. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. That is crazy. Wow. So that's how it started. And then it evolved from there, wanting to know more, from my personal history now to, more about the history of Black people. So I traced my family history probably about 6 generations back. So I get back to the early part of slavery. And that's kind of where, of course, the connection broke. Right. Yeah, of course.
And then, did the DNA. I did the early days of the DNA, which was 23andMe, where I did they had one of the earliest known or popular known DNA tests.
For Black folks?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Even though there were other ones that were older, and actually there was a Black one that was available, but we didn't know about it. The one at the most popularity was like Ancestry. I think they had developed one later on, but 23andMe at the time was one of the best ones that we had known about. Little did I know, African Ancestry was the database that they actually were using and pulling, the specimens for Africans. So didn't know.
Damn, people.
But kind of trace back my history a little bit more. At that time, they were not pinpointing it like African Ancestry was.
Right.
But as they evolved and learned the technology that African Ancestry did, they added those services on for free. So I did get that information back. And now I think I'll probably do African Ancestry soon. But so it expanded into that, then wanting to know about Black history. And then all the while I was collecting stuff. I was writing celebrities at the time, which, was kind of interesting for kids back then. I had pen pals. My very first in school was Lena Horne.
Oh, wow.
And I was in New Jersey. She was in New York. I can't really tell you how I found these celebrities' information. Like I said, I was a researcher. So if they were able to be found, I found them.
Right.
So I was writing her, and she would send me she would send me different pieces. Like I would send her note cards, and she would write me a note and sign it. Eric. Matter of fact, I have a piece that I'll send you a picture of from her. That was my very first piece. And when I actually started doing exhibits, I learned to frame. There was a gentleman, a white gentleman that had a antique shop, and he saw some of the stuff that I was doing. I was buying stuff from him, and he said, is there some stuff that you would like to do? I said, yes, I would love to learn how to mat and frame, because I can't afford to hire somebody to do the matting and frame. So I had to acquire those skills, and he actually offered to teach me, and it allowed me to use his equipment until I decided, to get my own.
Wow.
I only did that for probably I got maybe 3 or 4 lessons, got the hang of it, used his equipment for probably another week, and then bought my own. And he was like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to spend unnecessary money. I was like, no, I don't want you to think I'm trying to take advantage of you.
Right.
So as I would use the stuff, he was like, you don't have to replace it. I would always bring, the replacements to replace what I use, because I never wanted anybody to feel like I was using them for anything.
Okay.
So did that, learned how to mat and frame. And my very first piece that I actually made the frame and matted was my first piece from Lena Hard.
Wow. Okay.
So you see that the frame was a little janky, but it was my first. So they're sentimental, and I said, I'm going to go back and do that. And I said, no, actually, I'm going to leave it just like it is. That's my first piece that I ever collected, and then that's the first piece that I ever made the frame. So it's more sentimental for me.
Yeah, and then it's kind of like you get to see growth, like from here to there. Like I'm big on that. I'm big on that, because there's things that I have done in my little network and web of things, and it's like, I should change it. No. I want you to see where I started and where I've come to, so that way you can appreciate it. It didn't happen overnight. Like, I put in work for this.
Oh, yes. And the work that I have put in, my God.
How do you come across these things? Like, because there's not an online database.
There's a video I'm going to send you. I had that exact conversation with Dick Gregory.
Okay.
And the best thing I could tell him was that it found me.
Okay.
After doing it so long, you're connected spiritually and mentally with these pieces. And I had a dream that literally brought me to tears. I had a dream that God and the ancestors told me they trusted.
Okay.
After that point, things just started finding me. When you do something and you have a passion and a heart for it, so much so that you literally put your money where your mouth is, and you dedicate your time, your resources to it. That's a sense of dedication that kind of supersedes everything else. Mm-hmm. Talk and, saying that you have the desire to do what you're actually doing. Mm-hmm. And once I exceeded that point, that's when things started to find me. The most awkward things, I'd wake up in the middle of the night. Someone would just say, hey, check your email. I check my email, go through the emails. I'm going through 100 of emails, get to 99. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back to sleep. Something says, no, go one more. Went one more. And it happened to be it was a email from a gallery, and they had a bunch of stuff on there. I was just like, oh, this is nothing. I'm not even going to pay attention to this. And I happened to search through it and got all the way down to the bottom of that list. And it was a piece that I had never seen before, that had been like literally nobody had ever seen before. It was if you're familiar with Apollo Theater, they used to have a photographer, an official photographer that would do all of their shots, and they would take pictures of all the entertainment for that night. Okay. So everybody that was on the bill at the Apollo would get one of these kaleidoscopes, and it had different pictures of their performances throughout the night. And it was in a booklet, a photo frame, basically, that when you open it up, it had one side that was blank, and then the other side that was like a matted picture.
Okay.
Well, this one in particular, they had James Cleveland, the Caravans, like this is an old gospel group. Yeah. No. And this was actually signed by Clara Ward's mother, James Cleveland, and the musicians for that particular night. And there has been no James Cleveland stuff on the market, not even at a museum, nothing signed. Nobody literally has seen anything. So that was a piece that had literally found me in the middle of the night, pretty much.
Wow. And so you do, I know you said put your money where your mouth is. Do people give you the thing?
No.
Or do you have to buy it?
I have bought everything with the exception, actually, I take that back. once people found out my purpose and what I was doing, I did have a friend of mine. I mentioned Clara Ward before. Most people might not know who Clara Ward is in this generation. Mm-hmm. Clara Ward was one of the top gospel and crossover acts in the early days. Okay. Her and her group integrated Vegas. They were first Black groups and first gospel groups to
integrate.
Integrate. Thank you. Integrate Vegas. They also were the first gospel glamour girls, which literally they dropped the robes and were wearing gowns and wigs and all that. Yeah, so they were like pioneers. So when she died in like the 70s. Her sister literally carried on the legacy and everything. And I met her sister in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. We became friends. And when she died, she was trying to get me to take a lot of the stuff while she was alive. She did give me some stuff while she was alive. We actually did a volume of my documentary series while she was alive. Mm-hmm. After she died, she left me a lot of the stuff from their estate. So I did get some of the pictures. I got their Stellar Award from back in the 90s when they got that, and a few other items. So that's the extent of like gifts that I can think of. Otherwise, I've paid for everything in my pocket. Wow. I've literally my life savings buying back our history.
Can you is it possible to like write some things off as like tax write-offs? Like, can you get some of that money back?
Once it transitions into a business, this years ago for me had completely. Man, I can't even think of a big enough word, that it literally went from a hobby to a business. Mm-hmm. I want to say that it's been probably about 5 years, maybe. Mm-hmm. I would say anytime you have invested more than $25,000 in something, it becomes a business. I've spent well over that. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars buying back our history. Yeah, so some of the stuff can be written off. A lot of the expenses, my supplies, stuff like that. I also have turned it into a business as far as for doing traveling exhibits with the, the pieces in the collection and everything. So yes, it can be written off. Some of it.
Okay. And so do you so for say like the African American History Museum in DC hits you up and they're like, hey, I guess what I'm trying to ask is is there
I'm going to cut you off. What? Ain't going to happen. My issue with that, and I'm going to give you the background story.
Ooh, okay.
One thing to actually just put it straight out there and straight with no chaser. In the beginnings, when they were actually just starting to form that, I reached out to them countless times for myself and a lot of the old gospel legends. And they didn't return any correspondence. Mm-hmm. That was the first thing. Then a lot of the white dealers and collectors that I knew were saying, "Hey, Eric, that they're buying a lot of the stuff. You need to reach out to them. They definitely, if they're buying my stuff, they would love your stuff." Right. I reach out to them, and when I get vetted, of course they know I'm Black, and they ask me to donate. They're paying the white collectors and dealers, but asking the Black ones to donate. Right. So I thought that was just me. Every other Black collector that I know, and we have a great, resource of collectors that are all together and stay in contact. It's at least 15 of us that have the same exact story. Not a coincidence. Oh, wow. So that's my issue with that. But then also, we have given away our birthright time and time again. Right. Giving away our items and also selling them. Once our family members die, we call Goodwill to clean the shit out. Excuse my language. Mm-hmm. But hey, come get to the house. They're not interested. Most of these people are not interested in their history at all. Right. So hey, come on, get this. Somebody offer you $500. You give away everything. Then it goes to Goodwill goes to a local dealer or antique shop. They sell it to them. They get a couple $1,000s on it. From there, the antique dealer goes to the auction houses. The auction house then sell it to dummies like me. Mm-hmm. And they get thousands and thousands on top of that. Right. So something that you may give away for $500 goes to the dealer. Mm. They sell it for $1,500. Right. The dealer then sells it to the auction house. They auction it. It goes for $25,000. Right. And I'm the dummy that pays that much for it.
Don't say dummy. Don't say dummy.
But
it's necessary.
To build at times. But yes, it is absolutely necessary because now we own the history. Nobody can tell us about our history. They can't shape it. They can't reform it. They can't do what we call revisionist history.
Right.
Once we own our history, we are in control of how it is told and actually keeping it unadulterated.
Absolutely.
The impact of ownership on various levels. We're not just talking about owning land. Mm-hmm. We have to own our history. Mm-hmm. And that's the most important part because that's our legacy.
So we're going to circle back around. No. This is good. We're going to circle back around to that. Like, look, I was doing research on you. And I was like, oh, he's very black. Okay, cool. This is awesome because I am also very black. So I was like, okay, this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be fun. So we're gonna circle back around to that museum thing. We're gonna get back around to that because that's something we're gonna circle back around to that. But do you have a favorite piece of memorabilia?
Hate that question.
Okay. Pieces.
Okay. Favorite what? Okay. Okay. The easiest way to answer that question is I have favorite pieces for each collection within my collection. Mm-hmm. So like I have a huge Marcus Garvey collection. If I a huge Malcolm X collection, a huge Madam C.J. Walker collection, okay. A growing Poro collection. So I have favorite pieces within that. Mm-hmm. But if I had to pick,
let's do it like this then. Collection. Do you have a particular collection that you gravitate to more than any of those?
I have two.
Okay.
Look, I gotta bend the rules. Okay. My top two favorite are my spirit guides, my spirit animals, if you want to, the little trendy term. Mm-hmm. That's Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey. Okay. Those are two absolute favorite collections.
Good ones to pick.
I have two other, which are female, and that's Madam C.J. Walker and her actual predecessor and actual mentor and former boss, with Annie Malone, and she had Poro. Right. If you watch some of my stuff, I did
I was going, you know what? I had thought about asking you about the Madam C.J. Walker documentary, but I was like, nah, only because you've talked so... You talked at length on it with several different people, even one of Miss Annie's descendants. So I mean, like, you.
Yeah, for my my actual first episode of my YouTube, well, first two episodes of my YouTube show, I actually interviewed Madam C.J. Walker's great granddaughter. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so those episodes are available and those go at length. Mm-hmm. And we actually went, like, it was absolutely amazing. I showed her some pieces in my collection that she's never seen, didn't know existed.
Wow. Wow. That's lit. Yeah. That's dope.
It really is. It really is. I'm just excited thinking about it.
Yeah. So Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Madam C.J., and
Annie Malone.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Right. Those are my top 4 absolute favorites out of everything else in the world. My heart, if I had to pinpoint one, I would say Marcus Garvey. Okay. That collection actually encompasses everybody else because Malcolm X's father and mother were Garveyites. They actually had the Lansing division. They were the president and the secretary of that. Yep. So he falls under that. Malcolm X falls under that. He has his whole childhood basis under Marcus Garvey. And then, oh my God. Then Madam C.J. Walker also had an alliance with Garvey, and she used his Negro World newspaper to advertise. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, of course, if you have Madam C.J. Walker, you wouldn't have her without Annie Malone.
Right. So it's all like okay. Yeah, that's okay, cool. I was like, I know you probably get that question a lot, but I was like, I want to know. So I'm just like, I'm going to ask it.
I get that question all the time, and it's the absolute hardest question to answer. But Marcus Garvey is that one that ties everything in. So, and that's literally one of my largest collections. I have over 200 pieces in my Garvey collection. I'm actually inventorying that right now, so that's why I'm looking around like, oh yeah, I got definitely got that.
So speaking about Malcolm X, what is your I feel like you know what I'm about to ask. What is your take on the Malcolm Farrakhan situation? Because I've seen pictures of you with Farrakhan, so I'm gonna assume that you have at least a somewhat speakable working relationship with him. And I mean, you are a historian of Malcolm X, Marcus Luke. So I want to know, like, what is your feelings on that? Like, how does that go for you?
For me, it's a lot of stuff that people don't know, and a lot of stuff that was taken out of context, taken out of, blown out of proportion. I take the stance that that Sister Betty did. They reconciled before she died. Okay. So if she was able to do that, I don't think anybody else has any other questions. Right. Okay. Or issues with it. There was a cloud of things that happened, and he actually apologized for what his part could have been in it, and that was also him, just saying, or not defending, or, not saying, like, hey, whoever's doing it, because what's coming to, if you watch the Malcolm X series on
Netflix,
which was fantastic.
I haven't seen that one. I watched the previous one that came out like 10 years ago. I haven't gotten into it. I haven't seen that or Madam C.J. Walker. Okay. Or it's like one other one.
You can pause on the Madam C.J. Walker.
I know.
Yeah, that one already. And you'll see that when you watch the 2 episodes with me and her great-great-granddaughter, you'll get the background on that, the real deal.
Like I said, I haven't seen it, but I kind of feel like they might have green booked it, but I don't, you know what I'm saying?
You definitely have to check out the Malcolm X one. Okay. It's a must. Before you watch anything else, that actually takes you on a scholarly journey with a researcher that goes just chasing the facts. And that's one of the things that came out of that. And because of that actual documentary, the Manhattan DA decided to reopen the assassination case.
Okay. Because I personally, everybody that I talked to, well, no, I can't say everybody, but a large portion felt like it was the nation. And I'm like, no, the nation would not do that.
What it was not the nation per se.
Right.
It was members in the nation.
Right.
So that was what that was.
But I was like, I don't personally believe that Farrakhan sent out orders to have a hit on this man. I was like, man, that doesn't make sense.
Farrakhan didn't have that much power at that time. Farrakhan was actually the minister at the same mosque as Malcolm X. He was the assistant minister of that particular mosque. So that was his mentor. They had a long-standing history and everything. So it's a lot of things that could have been blown out of proportion.
Right. I mean, I kind of take it as, I'm not going to say that, what am I trying to say? I'm not going to downplay things, but I'm also going to say that, like, that was a family and you fight with your family. Right. And you say things that you don't mean all the time with your family, but that don't mean that you would actually, so it's kind of like one of those things. Like for me, it's like, I don't believe that, that was Farrakhan. Now, it might have been some rogues. It would be the first time that the FBI has contracted.
And it was sort of, and it wasn't even literally out of his particular mosque. It came out of the New Jersey mosque, where there were rivals that did not like the power that Malcolm had. And then also, Farrakhan was split. Farrakhan was really in a hard place. Who do you stick with? Do you stick with your mentor, the one that brought you in, or do you stick with your mentor, the one that actually brought this knowledge to both of you?
Exactly.
So he was in a very precarious situation where he was between a rock and a hard place. And so he went with the higher person. And, he said he had regrets about how everything went down, but also, it was, what do you do in that? Catch-22,
And so that brings me to my next question, because you're Christian, no?
I would like to say that I'm a spiritual person.
Okay, because that was going to be, I'm like, how does that work? Like, I'm not going to say that there's a lot of choosing my words carefully.
No, don't.
There are like, I'm trying to think of how to.
We're having an unfiltered family conversation.
I'm trying to think of how to say what I want to say. So a lot of people will say that, a lot of brothers in the nation will say that Islam is the true religion of the black man, to which I vehemently disagree because I know history. And then there'll be like, Christianity is a tool of slavery in the white man. How could you do that? To which I agree, but disagree, because Christianity is not a European religion. It took a trip through Europe and came back like everything else does, a little bleached, but it actually started in the cradle of Africa, which would be Eastern Africa, Ethiopia, that area over there. So it's like, I was going to ask you, because I wasn't really sure how that broke down. I'm like, how do you feel about being Black and being Christian? Because what I used to say when I was ignorant was that, and it's ignorant because, but there's a tinge of truth. There's a tinge of truth to it. It's like being a Black Christian is like being a Jewish Nazi in my mind.
It's definitely a conundrum and an oxymoron.
But again, like when I do my research and I watch things, because I'm very Black and I love Black people and stuff. Yeah. So it's like when I do that and I find that, oh, wow. So Christianity actually originated in Africa. So it is ours, like mostly everything. But, it took a trip. Yeah, it got whitewashed. So it's like, okay, well, so how do we reconcile the two?
But, I want to answer? It's a very, very loaded and controversial question. Mm-hmm. What I say is to each his own. And I think it's important for everybody to believe in a higher power than themselves.
Okay.
And to have a personal relationship with that higher power.
Okay.
Whether you call it Mother Earth, whether you call it Father God, whether you call it Jehovah, Yeshua, literally, you can go down. Mm-hmm. There are fundamental issues once you become learned, if you will.
Yes.
For me, there's always been a conflict. That duality in my mind ever since I was young. It was always a question because certain things just didn't add up.
Nope.
From the beginning for me.
Nope.
And
same. I ask questions. I ask very difficult questions.
Just believing and talking with spirit. It kind of told me to, check a couple things. Yeah. Look into some stuff.
Yeah.
When those things didn't add up, I asked questions. And then you get to the point where you people be like, oh no, you don't question that. That's not something that you question.
And I'm like, why?
Of course, you like, okay.
Yeah, that's not right.
You'll have the questions,
right,
which puts you on a lifelong journey of finding out who you are. What do you believe? That's an ongoing thing that somebody, if you're taking a spiritual journey, that's going to be an ongoing journey for you. Because as you grow, you learn more. And it's evolving. That's why I say I'm more spiritual than I am religious.
Okay.
Organized religion does not work for me.
It doesn't.
I can't make it.
So for me, like, and the other part of that is too, like in this country, I'm not going to talk about anybody else's history. I'm going to talk specifically about these 50 United States, continental 48. So for us, Christianity, Black church, all of these things were essential to living. You understand? So I understand
that part.
yeah. And so I understand the very fine, like, the very fine kind of thing, like, because when you do that, it's almost kind of like not only are you ostracizing yourself essentially from the people, but from the culture. But it's like, at what point do you take inventory of the things that are still serving you and the things that aren't, and how how to walk that line? Because you can have one, but
that's been the issue of making it. I couldn't reconcile those thus. And like you said, these are institutions that have literally brought us over, that have allowed us to survive, that literally have allowed us to thrive. But even in the Bible, when it says, in all you're getting, get understanding. So that's something that's going to be evolving. Each level, you literally have to make sure that you're getting a better understanding of what you believe and why.
Yes.
When things don't reconcile, you have to do the work to actually figure out, why do you believe this? Why are you holding? But the hardest conversation to have with yourself and with other Black folks is, how do you reconcile when everything that you've been taught has been a lie? I'll leave that alone. That's the point when you're really doing the deep work.
That's the work.
To get to an unfettered and unshackled and uninhibited spiritual life.
So I had this conversation with another. I consider myself agnostic, but I'm not, but whatever. But I had this conversation with someone else, and the way that he broke it down to me, long story, very short, is that he said, based on our history and our lineage in this place, religion is like for a very long time the only thing we had, right? And so when you go up against all of these forces that you have literally no control over, you have to have something to keep going. So it's like, if you take that away from someone, that's fine. But what else are you going to give them in place?
Give them that. Well, and the other thing with that is we were always masterful in trying to preserve our ancestry. So yes, we did take their religion once they got us over here, but we also infused it with our own.
Right.
So we never lost the essence of it. We did lose the language of it. We lost the foundation of it, but we never lost the practice of it. The feeling that's been encoded in our DNA. So there is a spiritual essence that has always followed us our entire lives. We feel that in the music. That's why we have such a tight-knit connection with music. Music has carried our spirituality.
Right. Music has carried us in various forms. It's literally a language that we speak.
Music is our language, period.
Right.
Every art form, music form that has been born on American soil has come out of the Black experience. Right. You have the spirituals, you have gospel music, you have jazz, you have blues, you have rock and roll, you have country. All of that is Black experience. We don't get credit for it. They kind of may give us a quick nod, but, it's not, they take everything that we create and they make it their own.
Right.
And then they add us in a category called Black such and such.
Right.
When did gospel become white? That became in the 2000s.
Really?
When they categorized us as Black gospel.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Most people don't realize it.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. Now we went from, R&B to, urban such and such. Or, they've literally taken our creation and then take it at the main one as their own and then add us in the Black such and such. So that's the whole thing goes back to what I was saying about us, allowing our birthright to be taken or we're giving it away. That's our responsibility to protect what is ours. That's the same thing with Black ownership, which I talked about before, not just in the sense of real estate, literally our history. Then you also have literally our art forms. We are the creators and originators of a lot of these art forms. Yeah. Why do we feel that we have to go to white people to distribute it?
Right.
You already have the audience. You have the access. You don't need anybody else. And until we realize that, we'll always be dependent on somebody else. That was with Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey wanted us to unite. Everybody has the whole Back to Africa thing. That's how they remember Marcus Garvey. I don't know if you can.
I can see it, yeah.
So, the big theme is Back to Africa. Marcus Garvey was not trying to take all Black folks back to Africa. It was not a physical. The first thing that he wanted to do was unite Africans with Africa mentally.
Right.
That was the thing. Everybody, that's why he always said, the Chinese have China. The Europeans have Europe. The English have England, and named every type of racial group. But he says, we have nowhere.
Right.
We have to unite ourselves back mentally with our motherland. That's where the transformation happens. And for me, in 2016, I think it was, the summer of 16, I took my first trip to Africa.
How was it? Where'd you go?
I was in Egypt.
Okay.
For 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I went with Dr. Ben's protege, Asher Kwesi. And when I tell you every answer, every question, every wondering I had was answered when I got there. Even I felt like I was home. Even though the people there now don't necessarily look like us.
Right.
They know our history.
Right.
So when they come, they say, welcome home. They realize that they're just the inhabitants.
Right.
Like, they know they're I can't even say the custodians. They know they're ones that have literally taken over and have assumed the identity.
Right.
The actual, original Egyptians and Kemet, So I wound up going from there. We went all the way down to the tip of Sudan, and we literally covered every major site in ancient Kemet history. And when I tell you, it was mind-boggling. It's so much to say about that. Let me just this to give you the short version. I have over 5,000 pictures that I took during those 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Because if I have conversations with Black people, they won't believe me. Colored folks want evidence.
Right. Yeah, we want
they don't want to take anything unless it's from white people. They'll take it at face value if it's from white people. But when you come tell
Jesus, let me shut up.
But if you don't come back with evidence,
oh man,
we won't believe you.
Right. That's facts.
So I have over 5,000 pictures.
Mm-hmm. I get it. I've been to Egypt. I've been to South Africa, but I completely understand as soon as you get there and you walk around, you get it, and it's not as hard to explain what you get. Yeah, it's hard to explain what you get, but you get it, and you come back different.
It's one of those things that literally, it's hard to buy into what you've been taught when you've seen something that predates it all.
Traveling alone will give that to you.
Oh, yes.
I tell Black people all the time, y'all need to get the hell away from here. Because
definitely. Nothing seen. And when you have traveled, you know not to take anything at face value. While not the second time, but the first time that they had a bombing in Paris, I happened to be there. And my I was going, I should say. And my grandmother was so worried. She's like, "Oh my God, there was a bomb in there. You shouldn't be going, blah, blah, blah." I was like, "Look, I'm only passing through," because I was headed to Dubai. Mm-hmm. And me and my cousin, we literally spent 24 hours in Paris. We were walking the streets. We did everything. Mm-hmm. The only thing that we missed being able to get into was the Louvre, but we did make it there. Mm-hmm. It was just closed by the time we got there. Nothing was going on. Absolutely nothing. We walked the streets, we took cabs, literally, it was nothing going on. And it was just, the news had made it seem like it was one thing, but being there, we were just like, what are they talking about?
I say that, that brings me to a second point of question. But I always say that when it comes to being Black here, you don't understand what a privilege it is to be Black and American until you leave America and you see the way that you are treated for being Black and American. For the very same thing that you are castigated and put down for here, when you go everywhere else, boy, that thing can get you places, man. All you got to do is open your mouth.
It'll have people questioning as well, because I lived in China for 2 years. Mm-hmm. I just moved back in 2018. Mm-hmm. Everything that you see going on right now in the news as it pertains to Blacks or people of African descent in Africa, mm-hmm. In China, is true. You being, and for me, I'm 6'2", I'm a big guy, and I'm Black. So you
stick out like a sore thumb over there.
Oh,
with the Japan, I know. I bet.
We're tall, dark. The thing that is most jarring is you're surrounded by millions at a time per day. You're always on. So you're like a hamster in a cage, right, on the wheel, right, and everybody's looking. So you don't get to turn off until you're actually in the privacy of your own home, right, there. So that was one of the most mentally taxing experiences of my life, right, because it was just you felt like you were objectified. You'll have people I didn't have as much hair as I have now. But that's in China. So because I was just like, oh no, I'm not gonna be no Chinaman's experiment. You're not gonna mess me up. Mm-hmm. So that whole time until I actually came home a year later, I wound up growing my hair out. And I would get people that would come, they would pull my hair. They would rub my skin to see if the color would come off, because they're used to blackface.
So
they think it's a Chinese person,
blackface.
What
Chinese person is 6'2"?
Right.
Literal 1% of the population.
Right. But the funny part is they look at us like white people look at Bigfoot. Like, oh, shit, they really do exist. That type of thing.
Yeah.
So and most of them, just remember that the culture over there is completely controlled by the government.
True.
So television is controlled by the government. Internet is controlled by the government.
Right. Yeah.
So they don't have access to Google per se. They don't have access to Facebook. They don't have access to a lot of these things because the government doesn't want them to have access to the outside world.
Right.
So all of those things take a factor. So they are completely ignorant when it comes. The one thing that I did learn about the Chinese culture was that it wasn't necessarily malicious. Their racism wasn't necessarily malicious as it was out of ignorance.
Right. Which is that's just natural. If you've never had any experience with a thing, you don't know what's okay. You don't know what's not okay. You don't know, it's.
Well, they do that part. No. I'm not going to excuse that type of ignorance.
Okay.
They know better because if you do what they do to you, they have a fit. So they do understand. It's just that they feel like their personal interest is more important than anybody else or the next person. So they have this ignorant stereotype that Black people stink. So when you get on I know. When you get on they'll either move or they'll go like this. And if I remember the first time that happened, I'm like, oh, I almost cussed. But I was just like, what in the world? So that literally after I got past that part and actually you get past being a spectacle, you have to take mental breaks. And for me, that mental break, because where I was living was literally across the bridge from Hong Kong. I was living in Shenzhen, the electronics capital of the world.
Right.
Everything that you use is manufactured right in that town. I used to source with this company that now Ray J has sourced with, now has put his company name on. I was there during that time period.
Oh, wow.
So I was there when he was coming to get the stuff sourced. He was doing that deal. So it was just like, yes, they use us for what they need us for, which is a means to an end. They love the culture. They love, the hype type of culture and things that we bring to things.
Right.
It's just like that. It's like, okay, that's all we like.
Right. We just want to take the blackness out of it. Right. Yeah.
Per se,
It's like Japan's different.
Yes. Oh, Japan is completely
Japan is way more civilized in their interactions with people.
Adore Black people, Black culture.
Yes.
It's total. They have almost reverence for what we've created, as opposed to the other ones that just want to appropriate it.
Yes. But you still get a little bit of a there's
stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a uneasiness. I remember sometimes it's just like curiosity, and sometimes it's uneasiness depending on where you go. But I didn't have anybody like walk up and touch my face or my arm or whatever. It was just everybody's just like, man, cool.
And the funny part is the flip side to that is, like I was saying, you need to have a mental break.
Yes.
So because I lived where I did, I could go across the bridge into Hong Kong. And I remember the first time I went to Hong Kong, and one of the people were like, hey, do you need help? Because I was literally looking around trying to figure out where the hell to go. I don't read Chinese. Right. I don't read Mandarin, none of that stuff. So they were just like, do you need help? And I was just like, yeah. So the thing about Hong Kong, what people have to understand, it was under...
Hong Kong is not China proper. English. Exactly, yeah.
It was under English rule. So Hong Kong is more of the civilized part of Chinese society.
Right.
That's where all the rich and high society people moved when there was a division in China, and the rural and poor stayed in mainland. The English colonized Hong Kong, so they're more refined, and they made that clear once I got to Hong Kong. It was just like, oh, it's going to be totally different here. Literally, it's just like New York. And I'm just like, really? So when I got down there to the area, which is just like Times Square, you have people passing, nobody's staring at you. You're not being, looked at, gawked at, touched, none of that stuff. It was a breath of fresh air. So that was the mental health check that we had. Like, you can only go so long in mainland China before you have to take a mental health break. going there, you can actually have a mental breakdown if you don't have those breaks. I had it very easy starting off the first couple of months because I stayed with my friends. My Spelman sister, she had been on and off in China since we had graduated. Oh, wow. And she's been teaching over there for, a decade at least. And by that time, she had really talked me into, I had never made it to visit. I was in a place in my career and in my life where I could work from anywhere as long as I had a computer and internet. So that's when I decided to go. And we stayed on the world's largest golf course. We didn't have much of that stuff. We didn't have the gawking. We didn't have any of that stuff unless we went to the mall or something like that. I was kind of sheltered for the first couple of months. When I moved, I found my place. I was teaching at the time, and I had moved closer to the technological area. And because my whole goal of going there was to create international trade lines for Black businesses, and also to hire a manufacturing company to manufacture my first book, which I had done. Okay.
This business called Living. Gotcha.
Yeah. And then also my merchandise, pins, patches. I've got a whole merchandise line that I actually manufactured while I was there. Okay. So I went there to make those connections with the actual the manufacturers, the marketplaces, and everything like that. And I got all that stuff done, but at the same time, I still had to live there to finish, out my goals. And that was one of the hardest parts of going around during that time period, was dealing with the mental anguish, if you would. It was literally draining.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And that was your period too.
After having been in Japan for 10 days, I was ready to leave. Because I don't speak nothing. I can't read nothing. Right. It's just so many people don't understand, like Asia as a whole. We're talking to China, Japan, Taiwan, India. These places are hyper populated. Like they make New York look like a quaint little suburb in North Carolina or something like that. So I try to tell people this, like it's so much, like you're inundated, sensory overload, because you've never really experienced. I don't know. But okay, getting back to that, I do have a question for you. Do you collect history from other parts of the diaspora? I could understand why not, but I'm
yes and no. It's natural progression, but we have so much here and so much to fill in here that I have not been released to be able to move past it yet. Okay. Because there's so many different eras, there's so many different things that's unknown, that are popping up. But the only part of the diaspora that I have, which is a great piece, is an original 15th century map of Africa. Oh, wow. That is what grounds my collection. That's the foundation of it. And I tell the story, the collection tells the story of everything after that.
Wow. How'd you acquire that?
That auction.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Who was it drawn by? Who was it drawn by?
It's by one of the original old European map makers. Okay. Yeah. And it was one of the most famous at the time. I can't remember now the name of it. But they were known for making maps for like centuries.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, because I only asked that too because the last time London is one of my favorite places on earth, ironically speaking.
I have not been yet.
I fucking love it. Exactly. It is so weird because again, people know me and they know Black. So they're like, but you like London? And I'm like, okay, London today is not the London that it was. It will never be the same. Like literally that city is 50% white and 50% other. And that is the hardcore drawn line. And so in London on the South Side in Brixton, they have the British Cultural Museum, but it's kind of like their African American History Museum, only ran by Black people, supported by Black people, so on and so forth. So it takes you through the history of, the day that the first European decided to go down to the continent and do whatever, and the day that the first slave touched down in the UK and goes on and so forth. And it's just like to see that, to know that section of history, like just quickly, for instance, at the same time in the 1940s that, Black people were getting lynched in Alabama, Black people in London were putting on plays at the equivalent of Broadway. And so like when you have that, and it gives you a better way to anchor yourself in a world history of like shared experiences and non-shared experience and lived experiences. Like it's very sobering to know that. I'm like, oh wow, at the same time that this was happening to my grandma, your grandma over here was dancing ballet.
That's literally what happened with Josephine Baker. That was one of the reasons why a lot of our artists literally left here
and went over there
and stayed over there and did not come back.
It was a very sobering thing to know. Like the Black people here were integrating high school in the 50s, and Black people over there were like graduating from Cambridge and Oxford and all of these different, and it's just so wild to me to like but again, that's just me. That's why I asked that question. I was like, have you been able to do that, or have you even?
Well, the thing about it is, and one thing that I do want to point out is that I don't knock any European travel, because that's where you'll actually get a lot of the truth from.
Exactly. Ironically.
No, not ironically. It's not ironic at all. They actually usurped so much of the African culture, so that's the only reason why it would make sense for it to be there, is because they literally pillaged Africa. So they would be the ones that actually have it. So it's not ironic. It's like they were the colonizers. They came in and took everything out of Africa, and now they don't want to give it back.
Right. Because we don't know how to treat our things. That literally has been said. Yeah. That's literally.
And that's the ironic part right there. It's just like, oh, well, they feel like it's theirs because they stole it and they have it.
Right.
As opposed to returning what is rightfully, belongs to a country that they have literally paid all of the slave owners for their loss, but never paid back the people who were stolen, that they actually helped to make sure that they were stolen, ensured to make sure that they could be stolen.
Right.
And, funded the actual massacre, murder, and transport of stolen people.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was, but that's just history, boy.
Right, I was just about to say that.
That's just history. It's just history. Like, what you gonna do?
Absolutely.
What you gonna do? Let's see.
Just like the Bible says, the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And there have been some devilish people in history.
Yes. With a smile. What do you think for Black folk and non-Black folk alike, if you had to narrow it down to maybe, let's say, 3 things that are a must-see intro into us as a people and a history on this continent, what do you think they would be?
Explain that a little bit more so I can make sure.
Like a must-see intro to Blackness, like Blackness 101.
You mean like movie
or book or play?
God, Before the Mayflower.
Okay.
Is a book that comes to mind. That is by oh my God, he was on the board of Morehouse. I can't think of his name at the moment. It'll come to me in a second.
Okay.
The Malcolm X.
Okay.
The movie.
Which one? Netflix or Denzel Washington?
That's a documentary series on Netflix. The Denzel Washington and Spike Lee one, which actually people don't know the original manuscript was actually written by James Baldwin.
Oh wow.
But that's another story.
I did not know.
I actually got a letter from James Baldwin that talks about him writing that, and also in one of the original screenplays, one of the drafts. I have the third version of it, and it actually gives James Baldwin credit on the front of it, and has Spike on there as well.
Oh, wow.
This is the actual manuscript of the actual screenplay or the movie that was done by Spike, but it was written James Baldwin. That was 2 I gave you, right?
That was 2, yes. Before the Mayflower, Malcolm X movie.
Yeah, I would say also Philosophies and Opinion, 1 and 2 of that's by Marcus Garvey.
Okay.
Those 3 give a pretty much full spectrum up through 65. From the beginning of our sojourn here, before slavery,
right.
We used to come here because we were the world's best ship makers.
Oh, yeah. Black people have been all over the world.
So that's why
been to America many times.
We've been traveling here way before
Mesoamerica, Central America, all of that. Yep.
So that book starts with the beginning of that, before the Mayflower. Then you go into the turn of the century. You have Garvey and Garveyism, which is covered through philosophies and opinions. And some of the extensions from there, you got the third book, which would have been Garvey and Garveyism. That covers from the century all the way up through the 30s.
Okay.
And you have the autobiography of Malcolm X, or the movie, which covers from the 30s all the way up through 65.
65, yeah. 60s-ish, yeah. What's interesting to me, and for time's sake, I don't know, we don't got to get into it, but you didn't say W.E. Du Bois's Souls of Black Folk, and I really like that book.
You only gave me 3 options. So that's your fault. That is your fault. And I have an autographed copy of Souls of Black Folks, too.
Really? Of course you do.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you? Like, if you're you. Okay.
But Du Bois wasn't one of my favorites early on.
Okay.
Because of his attacks on Garvey and the Garvey movement.
Okay.
He was part of the reason why Garvey was targeted by the FBI. Him, Chandler Owens, and A. Philip Randolph actually created a Garvey Must Go campaign.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they were a part of basically Black people attacking Black people. And it was at that, it was more so mulatto or light-skinned Black people against dark-skinned Black people.
Okay.
And I did. And he later apologized for all of that stuff that he did once he made it to Africa. But, yeah, that's all.
I like the Souls of Black people for it speaks to the specific American condition. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that is, I mean, like he saw the writing on the wall before there was a wall to write on. And I was like, mm-hmm. Wow, it's very, interesting to. Mm-hmm. So, let me see, probably like the last thing I think, what is a habit that you have developed or something that you're surprised that you've kept up with during quarantine?
I would say during season, I have become even more committed. It was more so for me 2020. So it started off with 20. But one thing that I've literally put into practice more now than ever because of the quarantine and the time to think and the time to recapitulate and reflect on all these things was not leaving anything for tomorrow.
Okay.
Not off for tomorrow what can be done today. Following through on everything that I started off. That was my my new decade. I was going to say New Year's, but I don't want to say that because it's much more powerful than that. It's my new decade mantra. Is literally starting in 2020, which I actually started in 2019, but finishing everything that I left undone. That has been literally my mantra for this year, and I've put it in high gear with the quarantine. It's just like, okay, there's so many things that I left unfinished.
Now you got the time to do.
I've had time to think about how to execute it. I have time to really put everything in high gear. And even with this interview, this is one of them because I said I would share the information that I have. That's my responsibility. That's the role that I've been given, the title that I've been bestowed upon by the ancestors now that I have to live up to. So because I've always wanted to take the back seat. I never liked being in the forefront. I've always liked for the history and the stories to tell itself, but obviously we can't speak, so right. I have to. Right. And I realized also in retrospect that if I kind of did a stand back approach from it, people didn't get as much from it.
Right.
And when I actually was in the forefront telling the story, telling the history and stuff, people bought into it. Like they literally it was infectious to them. And I realized that I was the key to that, which I didn't like, but at the same time was like, you don't have a choice.
Right.
So those things, literally not leaving anything undone, committing to completing everything that has already been started and that will be started in this time frame and then seeing it to fruition.
Wow. Okay. Well, damn, I was just happy I keep brushing my teeth every day. But now, I mean, like, you're making me want to do better.
That's great. That's fantastic. That's anybody's mission that really has a purpose to it, though. You want to actually help or motivate people to elevate their interest, elevate your mission, elevate your vision, elevate your purpose, elevate your passion. And if I or anybody else can walk away with having inspired one person to do that, then we have literally accomplished and took a step further in our purpose. So to hear that, if I can motivate you to move past just brushing your teeth, that's my job.
Oh man, yeah. No, I think the best thing that's come out of this quarantine for me is like this is what we're doing right now. Just finding a different way to be creative and just talk to people, share people's stories, and teeth brushing. I mean, like, so the two of those,
absolutely, just because nobody wants to talk to anybody.
Virtually or not,
right? Because virtually we can still see.
Oh man, it's like some stuff I didn't get a chance to ask you, but like
I got time.
Nah, I gotta wrap it up. There's another young lady calling in too, so it's like, but we'll have to do this again. I have to bring you back on or something. So but Mr. Majette, thank you so much for your time.
I said it's my pleasure.
Oh, thank you. And hey, that's it, guys. Be easy, take care, stay black, stay creative. Bye. That's it, guys. Thanks for listening. You can follow us on the Instagrams at the OVT Network, and you can follow me, JC, at JC from the OVT. Very simple, right? This podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, and pretty much everywhere in between. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and rate us 5 stars if you were so inclined. Thank you. Quarantine Talks is a podcast that is also available on YouTube. Just type in the OVT Network and hit subscribe for all of the latest and greatest from we at the OVT. Lastly, we are an independent and Black-owned media network, guys. So if you enjoyed the content and you would like to drop a donation, you may do so on Cash App or the Venmo at the OVT Network. All one word, the OVT Network. Quarantine Talks is edited and produced by me, JC, with original music produced by Brian Haddon. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Stay safe, stay creative, and most importantly, stay sane. Find your peace, man. It's crazy out here. Laters.